Massive rate cuts coming. What? Yeah, we got to talk about this. Not only this idea of massive rate cuts coming, huge rate cuts. I mean, I'm talking almost 3% of cuts here predicted by something pretty big. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk earnings. Oh, man, do not look at Solar Edge. You think that would have already been priced in. It wasn't. Qualcomm, CVS, Airbnb, PayPal, DoorDash, Israel-Palestine. What the heck just happened to housing with the real estate lawsuit? I am shocked that lawsuit is finally over. I mean, I feel like this has been going on forever. So we're going to talk about that real estate commissions lawsuit. I'll tell you, that's going to cause some big changes for the real estate community, and I'm going to tell you what it means as a buyer. But first, let me get the title out of the way here. Higher for longer. The higher for longer concept, quote, has a really dark underbelly to it that has affected the market for the last 6 to 8 weeks. And guess who says what's next? Jeffrey Gundlach, who's been a big bear investor for decades. Mr. Gundlach says one thing we know is that the economy and market cannot sustain these interest rates and this deficit any longer. Gundlach now says a recession will be here by the first part of next year, possibly necessitating the lowering of rates to 2.5% by early summer. This comes after today, Jerome Powell told us, nope, we don't have a recession on our forecast, and the Fed's never been wrong with their forecast. But anyway, this is wild. 2.5% is basically 275 basis points worth of cuts if they go to that extreme based on Jeffrey Gundlach's expectation here following the Fed meeting today. He says that if the economy rolls over as I expect, it's not going to cut 50 basis points at a time. They're going to start by cutting 200 basis points. Now, let's have a quick discussion about that. Do y'all think that is actually possible? I mean, JPOW today is like, we're going so far above trend. What? There's no need to cut. We'll just stay on this high horse for longer. Do you think the Fed will slash that large if we go into a recession?
I don't think so.
Why?
I think JPOW's getting exactly what he wanted.
A recession?
Yeah.
You think he wants the recession? Wow.
The thing is, we're teetering on recession where it's like a company missed by earnings by like 0.1%.
Yeah.
All you see is massive miss.
Yeah.
Whereas if we see recession, I think it'll be barely a recession. It'll still be considered a recession, but Two
nominal quarters of negative GDP. Okay.
Nominal. So
but if it's nominal, are they really going, like, at what point does the Fed care if we're in a technical recession versus not? Do they care about that?
The point of me bringing that up is if we were in a recession today, but we didn't find out until tomorrow, are our lives really that different?
Right.
I don't think it really matters that much.
Interesting. Okay, so you think Jeffrey Gundlach's wrong. What about you, Mikey? Is Jeffrey Gundlach wrong here? If we go into recession and people start losing their jobs, is the Fed going to freak out and go for a 200 BP cut like Gundlach is calling for?
That's extreme. I can see the cut. I mean, I think J-Pow kind of is just winging it. So
he kind of does seem that way, dude. Like every meeting, it sounds like he has a new definition or like a flip flop on something. It's like, the dot plot matters. Nah, just kidding. The dot plot doesn't matter. We're going to go higher. Maybe we won't go higher. Maybe we're done. Maybe we're not, though. Who knows? It really feels like a Rorschach test.
Yeah, basically. So
what do you see?
It's possible. That's an extreme rate. I don't know if it's going to be that high, but I mean, if it comes down to it, I don't think JPOW will have an issue. He'll be like, oh, I always said.
Yeah, exactly. It is interesting, though. He gave a big warning to the real estate market today, which is fantastic for HouseHack because we're sitting on cashola as the fundraise ends today. JPOW, big old warning for real estate, suggesting he's eyeing those 8% interest rates. And based on contacts he's talking to, sounds like there will be significant disruption coming in the housing market. What's fascinating is everybody in housing is like, oh, don't sell your house until the spring. And so I wonder if we're going to get like a massive surge of inventory in the spring. And it makes sense that you wouldn't really see like a surge in the winter because you never do, right? You do see pain in the winter, but you generally don't see inventory go up. Can you, though, go from then pain to inventory up in the spring? That'll be really fascinating. So I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I think you'll go have two different times of opportunity. You'll have people needing to sell in the winter, or you can get good prices, just like the one that you mentioned in today's video. HouseHack got a great deal because somebody really needed to sell.
Oh my gosh, they were begging
yes.
for money, and it was perfect. I'm
And
like,
you've said this for like
convince me.
you've said it for like the last 2 quarters. People will sell in the winter. I don't know if you want to call now winter, whatever you want to call it. People will sell in the winter because they have to, not because they want to.
Yep.
And you've always said like that's when we'll get great deals, and lo and behold, we got one right in our backyard, which is pretty sweet.
Yeah, and there'll be, I mean, there are going to be so many more, and we're seeing more and more. It seems like agents reaching out all the time, like, hey, can you buy this? Can you buy this? Can you buy this? And we're just holding out for the greatest deals right now because nobody really knows how long the real estate pain is going to last. Is it going to be 5 years, 10 years, 1 year? Who knows? So we'll see. If Gundlach is right, though, and they cut rates by 200 bips by next summer, which is a pretty aggressive call. I mean, a lot of people are going to be talking about this over the next 24 hours. This is, I don't know if this is like marketing for his firm, Double Line Capital. It probably is.
You're so jaded. You know it is.
Yeah.
You're so jaded. You know it is.
It's always marketing. It's like, I mean, it probably is. I mean, like, think about it. If he goes on CNBC, he's like, you know, I think if we have a recession, the Fed's going to cut. Everybody's going to be like, okay.
If Bill Ackman said that, what's the first thing you would think?
Oh, if Bill Ackman said rates are going to plummet?
Yeah.
Oh, that he just went mega long bonds,
exactly.
you know?
I think it's a super interesting point, and I love debating it.
Yeah.
But it's just like, we know what these guys are doing. Like, it's all the game. This is not our first rodeo, but I do think it's really important.
That's a good point.
There's the bearish jadedness and there's the bullish jadedness. Everybody has their turn.
Tom, I like that everyone has their turn. Tom Lee, everyone has their turn. Tom Lee, that guy's always on CNBC. He's like the resident bull. Like every month, it's going to be the greatest rally ever. It's so interesting. I know I'm bullish, but I'm also realistic. I'm like, volatile, man. It's going to be volatile. And it's been, I mean, look, the 10-year dropped like 15 bips today. It's down at 4.37. That should help real estate a little bit. But it didn't help earnings. Mikey, what happened here?
Yeah, we had a couple of significant earnings to go over today. So Qualcomm reported after the bell. They forecast that their first quarter sales and profits were above Wall Street's target, so that was good, which was actually kind of surprising considering they've been struggling with a little bit of a smartphone slump. Let me get the...
They've been struggling for a while with 5G and handsets. They call them handsets, I guess, in the international community. They're handsets. I'm like, it's a phone, bro. Anyway, handset sales are always the problem. And that'll be also fascinating for Apple coming up here. So what else do we have?
Yeah, with Qualcomm, they went up 1.74% today, but in the after hours during earnings, they went up another 3.42.
Okay.
So I got some numbers here. Forecast current quarter revenue of $9.1 billion to $9.9 billion, with a midpoint above analysts' expectations of 9.2. They predicted current quarter adjusted profits of $2.25 to $2.45 per share, beating expectations of $2.23. And lastly, for the just ended fiscal fourth quarter, Qualcomm reported sales of $8.67 billion and adjusted profits of $2.02 per share, which are both above analyst estimates of $8.51 billion and $1.91 per share.
You know, it's interesting. They say here in their commentary, in their earnings call right now that's going on, the Android handset market is more stable. This is in where it looks like they're discussing an expectation of a 35% increase of Chinese handset makers.
Huawei.
And who all's using Android? Is Huawei using? I mean, what are they using? Android?
Every time I look up the stats between iOS and Android users, it shocks me. Like Android users are so much further ahead than iOS users in terms of market share. It's astounding.
Wow.
It's not even close. I can pull up that exact number if you guys want.
I feel like even though they're ahead, I think it's been decreasing because I remember, I mean, you go back 5-10 years ago in Europe and everyone's making fun of me for having an iPhone. Like, that's so American of you. Whereas this time I'm over there and I can't find a USB-C cable because everyone's got iPhones now.
So this is as of August 2023, and Android mobile operating system holds the largest market share of 70% globally. Because if you think about it, when I was in South America, nobody had iPhones. Not a single person.
It must be an affordability issue.
Yeah, it's all affordability. It's all Huawei, and it's all... Yeah, Huawei's pretty much the biggest one.
It looks like they had to replace Android because they got cut off in 2019. The U.S. government cut them off basically, or forced Google to cut them off. So they came out with their own OS called Harmony OS.
That's right. Yeah,
that's interesting. But that's fascinating. So if we go to specifically what the CEO here is saying, I mean, he says Android handset market is more stable. I do wonder if that is sort of a little tell that maybe there's pain from these iPhone 15s, because you are seeing price cuts on the iPhone 15s in China and India. And a lot of people think that iPhone rev's really going to miss over at Apple. But who knows? Sometimes you get such bearish expectations, and then companies beat those bearish expectations. With the exception of course, in solar, where there are bearish expectations, and then companies miss those horribly. Like, for example, when I jump over to Solar Edge today, it is bad. I'll jump in here, Mikey, on Solar Edge quickly, and then I'll let you keep going here with the other ones. Solar Edge had Q3 revenue that only missed by about $7 million, which is nominal. It's like a 1% miss. That's not the big deal. The big deal, and they only have a gross margin of 5 to 8%. That's their forecast. Like, that's horrible. Compare that to Enphase. Enphase is like a 47% gross margin. It is such a better business in the solar industry. The problem is the entire ocean is sinking over there. Ooh. But anyway, Solar Edge's forecast, they were expecting Q4 revenue to be $718 million. Much like Enphase, comes in at half, $325 million. So the stock's down like what was it, 20 something percent right now?
Hours, yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's terrible. And it's wild. You think a lot of exactly 20% now. You would think that a lot of that had already been priced in the solar market, given that Tesla gave us a warning about this. Enphase gave us a warning about this. First Solar was okay. They had a decent report. They didn't move too much, it looked like, afterwards. But even Enphase getting hit in the after hours after the Solar Edge report. It's like, how far can you go? I guess you could always draw a line where Tattooed Chef is and compare them. But
so I've always wanted to. I've been trying to get this answer. Is this cyclical or fundamental? These misses.
Yeah.
Are they all cyclical, or is there a core underlying issue here with all solar companies?
It's solely interest rates.
Solely cyclical.
Solely interest. That's it. Because it's like, think about it. You have the payback for solar makes sense when the rates are low enough. And the rates don't have to be like mega low. Like, the payback for solar is fantastic. You buy the batteries. Battery in a solar system, you have a break even on those of like 4.5 years in some markets, sometimes even less. That means you're basically profiting off these systems. Some markets, you're at like a 6-year break even. The more batteries you get and the quicker the batteries can discharge, the lower your break even, because you want the battery to discharge power when it's most expensive. And the quicker you can discharge power to offset all your usage, usually between like 4 to 8 p.m., the more money and like basically you're saving, and therefore the shorter your payback period. Enphase, for example, just released the IQ8 battery, this brand spanking new battery that has a substantially faster discharge rate for exactly that, reducing the payback period. Those are the sort of innovations that you're seeing there. That's not going anywhere. The problem is when you go get a quote for solar right now, you're getting an 11 or 12% interest rate quote. Who the hell is buying it? The numbers don't make sense anymore. So you really need those to probably have, which is going to, it might take a while, unless what Jeffrey Gundlach says is right and we get 200 basis points of cuts. Like, if you're a solar investor right now, you should be praying for a recession, because you get a recession, even with job losses, the people who aren't losing their jobs will be able to finance cheap solar panels even during a recession. Kind of wild to think about. You want the cuts.
What's interesting about solar, I'm kind of in my mind putting a bunch of companies in interest rate sensitive environments, like type of stocks.
Yes.
So Tesla's obviously one that gets hurt by interest rates. But the difference between Tesla and like a solar company is people will still buy a Tesla at a higher interest rate because they want to. But people will not buy solar. Like, there's not a need. Like, there's not like, oh, like I'm earning this much, therefore I can go buy a Tesla. It's like you have solar. It's like you only do it when it makes sense. Like,
it's an investment.
Yes, the numbers have.
Yeah.
Whereas a car, you're like, I'm spending money.
Yeah, totally. I think that's a great analogy. It's like you want the latest iPhone. You want the Tesla car. It's a bonus that it's green. Why do you get solar? To save you money. As soon as it stops saving you money, you don't buy solar.
And that's kind of like the TLDR of what's going on with solar, I think, is like it doesn't, like the numbers aren't lining up. And when numbers don't line up, everybody can see it.
Yep, that's what it is. Somebody here in the chat saying, can I get an Enphase battery with a solar, with a Tesla roof? Theoretically, it's unlikely, I think, that you would mix and match like that. So I think that's very unlikely. You'd probably just have a Tesla battery. I think the solar roof is a ripoff. I don't think anybody should get a solar roof. I know you like the solar roof.
If you are going to be buying a new roof anyway, that's when I would look into it. But if you can
Yeah.
patch up the roof, just do that instead.
I mean, I guess it depends what kind of roof too. Like if you have a concrete tile roof and the concrete tile roof needs to be replaced and it's going to cost you 50 grand to replace it. Well, crap, you're right. That almost pays for like your Tesla roof solar panels, right? But most people in America have comp shingle roofs that are going to cost you like 12 grand to replace. So you're going to go, you know, from 12 grand to 50K. I don't know. I guess you have to weigh that next to how much it will cost to put panels on. For me, I think you're paying probably about 2.5x going from comp to solar roof, and it doesn't make sense. But if it's concrete tile, you're probably right.
Can you go from concrete to shingles?
You generally wouldn't, because a house that is built with a concrete tile roof can support the weight of a concrete tile roof, and they look way better. They last way longer. I mean, you're talking 50 to sometimes even 70 years. Even in areas like in Florida, you almost don't even, well, you do in some of the older neighborhoods. You see less of the comp shingles because they just blow off. You know, in the hurricanes, it's terrible. So although those roof tiles will come down, the concrete tiles, I've lived through plenty of hurricanes, and you come out and they're just tiles on the floor and they're shattered, obviously. But it's like, oh, if that would have hit your head, you'd be like dead. So, but yeah, so usually you wouldn't go from a housing structure that could support concrete tile down to comp shingle, and you can't go up. So you can't go from comp shingle to concrete.
Yeah.
You don't have the infrastructure usually for it. So okay. So yeah, that's a solar discussion. What do we have next on earnings?
A couple more earnings. So we have CVS. They reported third quarter adjusted earnings and revenues that beat Wall Street expectations. They were reporting this morning. Stock didn't move too much today. It's actually slightly down on the day. But last quarter they launched this cost-cutting program, and so it looks like they're pivoting to more of the drug focus, and their pharmacy's been killing it this last quarter. So that's basically why they ended up having a good quarter. CVS lowered its full.
Why? Like, why is there?
I'm trying to think.
Like, because you get shots like the Ozempic and the Wegovy's or whatever. You get those at the doctor's office. Are people really getting boosted? Like,
Well,
what are people getting?
prescribed at the doctor's office. You still have to go pick them up at a pharmacy.
What? The shots?
No, with whatever prescription medication you get.
Are they no, that makes sense. But is that self-administered, or do you have to do that in a doctor's office?
I thought. Let me check. That's
that would be interesting, because I know you can self-administer shots. Like Lauren has Dupixent, and that's a self-administered shot. So that would be really interesting. Why CVS is seeing that kind of a pharmacy push. I'm also curious to see how they're doing on pricing over there. When I hear cost cuts, I love it, because it's like, this is companies getting more efficient. You want to see that. So that's pretty critical.
Self-injected.
It is self-injected?
It should be self-injected weekly.
Okay, so you could pick that up at CVS, right? Like, you're not gonna. I don't know if you can get that on the Amazon pharmacy yet. Does anybody actually use that Amazon pharmacy?
I didn't know that was a thing.
Or are they just trying to get to that? Because they bought some pharma company or whatever. Well, I wonder what the status of that is. And then how is that going to affect?
Does Whole Foods have a pharmacy? Whole Foods would have a pharmacy, would they?
I don't know, but that's a good question. I've
that's
never
like an
seen a
easy way.
pharmacy inside of a Whole Foods, but Amazon does. Pharmacy.amazon.com. Finally, a pharmacy that really delivers. Wow. Look, you can get Prime on your pills. Oh, jeez. Coupons, most insurance plans accepted, goodbye pharmacy line. Boy, I honestly don't think companies like CVS and Rite Aid, well, Rite Aid's going bankrupt. I was going to say, I don't think they're going to make it.
You were right about that.
Yeah, that one. But like, how? Because everything is more expensive at a pharmacy. Everything you want to buy, anything you take off a shelf is much more expensive. They're like a glorified convenience store.
I wonder if Costco's pharmacy is still inexpensive, because you can actually go and visit that without Costco membership.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I like Costco a lot.
Me too.
Costco's great. I refuse to go because I refuse to go to any grocery store.
I've never heard you say the words, I'm going to Costco.
Well, that's true. I don't go, but we buy from Costco. We just get it delivered.
Yeah, delivery's OP, yeah.
Yeah. So, but I used to, when I was a kid, I would always go get the free samples. You go to the door and you just go, my mom's in there. And then you just walk away. It's terrible. It's terrible. We did have a membership, in fairness, so I didn't feel like I was stealing. But anyway, okay, so that's interesting on CVS. What's another one?
We got Airbnb.
Oh my gosh, are they still alive?
Yeah,
they're
they
still-
actually did really well. I actually listened to their earnings
really?
call,
Yeah,
so
go
I can
for
take it from here.
Yeah.
They did beat on revenue, and there was a slightly lower guidance, but it was only 0.18% lower guidance for
Sure.
revenue, which, like I said, you see all like miss revenue, but it's really just 1.8%. They did say, I pulled a couple of quotes from the earnings call that I thought were interesting. So before I get into the quotes, the year-over-year supply growth, so new listings, 19% from last year.
I think that is bullshit.
Really?
Because they're putting apartments up. Like they're literally they're making deals with apartment buildings to allow people who live in the apartment buildings to sublease their apartments, which is great. But the supply, like when we hear the supply explosion, the supply keeps, like the physical product keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. Like they're going, it's how many more room rentals can we get? How many more apartments can we get? And so people hear, oh my gosh, Airbnb supplies is growing so much. So they think the revenue is going to extrapolate just like the previous revenue had. But if the previous revenue was houses that rent out for, I don't know, $300 a night, and the new income is $40 a night, it's not going to be as good. It's worth like 1/4 the amount of new so there's an asterisk in that one.
I want to hear your thoughts on this one. Nights booked is up 14% year over year. So total, because that would be a revenue generator. That's not arbitrary.
Well, no, because it could be nights of apartments as well.
Nights of rooms is just as, like, you're not paying $300 a night, but like room
Right.
rentals, but like it's still nights booked. Like that is earned revenue.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's not revenue. I'm just saying I think it's lower value revenue. What's their forecast? Did they give a forecast? Oh yeah, they did. Here, fourth quarter revenue for 2.15 billion versus the 2.18. Like you said, nominal miss. I mean, look, the earnings were roughly in line. What are they saying in the earnings call?
So they said two things that I thought were really interesting. One of them was they saw softness in Q3, and this bled over into Q4 by saying we're seeing greater volatility in early Q4. We are closely monitoring macroeconomic trends and geopolitical conflicts that may impact travel demand.
Music to J-Pow's ears.
Yeah.
Who else mentioned that they saw? Oh, the advertising slump started when that Israel invasion started. Meta complained about that. I think Google complained about that. And see here, Airbnb sees economic volatility dampening travel demand. Wow.
So something that they talk a lot about on their earnings call is like their pain point is people always compare them to a hotel with experience. Like with a hotel, you're going to get a bed and a TV, but their new marketing campaign is to that of families with 3 or more, and they said it's been the best marketing campaign they've ever done. Because if you go to a hotel, 3 people in one hotel room is a little cramped, so you might have to get 2 hotel rooms.
Right.
And then you have to meet down in the lobby, and that gets convoluted. But they're marketing that like, hey, instead of going to a lobby, you have a house, you have 3 beds instead of 1 bed. So that's their marketing campaign. They said it's been the most successful one that they've ever done.
I agree with that. I think if you're traveling with a group of coworkers or whatever, Airbnb is fantastic for that. I just hate the quality volatility you get from Airbnb.
We loved the one in Florida. The last one we did
That
as
was
a
new
company
construction.
There was.
Brand freaking new construction. Like, how do you F that up?
Yeah. I traveled all of Europe doing Airbnb only, and I didn't have a bad experience. It was great.
Tell me about your New York Airbnb.
New York was awful. That was probably one of the top 5 worst nights of my life.
In fairness, that was also, I think, probably an illegal Airbnb, right? Aren't they banned in there?
No, that was not an Airbnb. That was my problem. I did it through like hotel.com.
Oh, weird.
And
But it was like a room rental.
I was like trying to be so proud. Like, I'm going to try to save the company so much money.
Yeah, yeah.
And I got like the cheapest one. It was like a refugee camp, dude. I'm not even kidding you. It was
terrible.
bad. The last thing I want to talk about for Airbnb, their free cash flow is $1.3 billion down to the free cash flow. That's 30% greater than year over. That's 30% up year over.
Look, they make money, man. You
crazy.
can't like poop on Airbnb that much because they do crank money. That's amazing cash flow.
The thing that's brilliant about their model is they don't incur the cost of damages to properties. Like they don't carry the burden of those costs, which is brilliant. But they do. I want to
unlike Hertz renting out Teslas.
Exactly, just like that. So if you hold the product, then you're toast.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. Okay, very good. So that's Airbnb. Okay, what else do we have?
We'll do these last couple pretty quickly. We got PayPal. They beat on earnings, although they had kind of light guidance. But the things of PayPal that were worth noting, I think, is one, they got a new CFO.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one is they got the green light for cryptocurrency transactions in Britain.
Oh, wow. The crypto community loves hearing that. Look, I mean, I think if people want to buy and sell Bitcoin, they should be able to. Like, you know, and I think the ETF is like long overdue as well. Let's see. Total payment volume for PayPal was up marginally. And people are going to be looking for their growth. I wonder what did they guide? The Q4 adjusted EPS 4.98. It's actually slightly better than what the market was expecting. So not bad. The question though is, and we were writing this down this morning in the Course Member live stream, the big question for PayPal is, will they grow? How much are they going to get beat up from what they've messed up on a social media basis, where they were incorporating fees if you spread disinformation or whatever, how you could get fined, what was it, $2,500 or some amount or something like that. How much is that actually going to long-term affect PayPal? But I mean, that stock's down 30% year to date, 35% past year. Last 5 years, if you invested in PayPal 5 years ago, you would be down 38%.
Wow.
That's crazy. That is absolutely wild. And all time, if you invested in PayPal back in 2015, you would be up 49%. That's not that much for 8 years of investing. I mean, nominally, that's like, what, 8 divided by 5, I don't know, 6, 7, something like that. That's sad. It's not even
If you
compounded.
invested in Bitcoin 5 years ago, you'd be up 455%. Year to date, they've more than doubled, man. It's on a run right now.
Bitcoin is. Yeah, the ETF is really, I do worry, one worry that I have, and I think it's coming at a good time for Bitcoin though, because I think macro will slowly start trending up as people see JPOW's peaked out on rates and things will get better again. We'll have gone through this little oopsie doopsie kind of like we did at the end of last year, and things will trend up again. That'll be good for Bitcoin and risk assets as well. But I actually don't think there are going to be that many new flows into these ETFs. Like, you'll get an initial surge in the ETFs and then obviously a drop off. But I just can't see that as being like this new massive surge of trading volume for Bitcoin. So while I'm optimistic, I mean, it's certainly not a bad thing, and it's great for the crypto community, I do think there's some limited upside outside of macro. But again, we go back to risk on mode, Bitcoin will do even better.
Yeah, I have a macro thought. Is the fear that JPOW is going to raise rates, or that he's as serious as he is about higher for longer? Because from my anecdotal experience, from like the limited research I do, the fear isn't necessarily the rates are going to keep going up. It's that he's holding them longer than we thought. Like, before, when they started raising, people thought JPOW was going to raise and then start cutting. Yeah. But JPOW's raising and now holding. Is the fear that he's going to hold longer than people thought, or is the fear that he's going to keep raising?
Well, there are two answers. Number one, there is actually a fear of continued raising. Okay. The reason for that is every time you raise, you make it more desirable to be in money markets than in bonds. Remember back, a year and a bit ago, when HouseHack first bought bonds, money markets were paying like 1.5%, and the bond market was paying 4.25%. So we were milking 4.25% for way longer than what money markets were offering. So as long as you keep having rates going up, what you're doing is you're putting downward price pressure on bonds. And so people are like, okay, well, I won't touch bonds yet until JPOW's done. As soon as the market is convinced, which we're getting really close to it, as soon as the market is convinced that JPOW is done raising rates, which I think he already is, but once the market is convinced of that, then you should see substantial treasury buying, and that'll lower treasury yields pretty quickly and help soften some of that pain in real estate. So effectively, staying higher for longer doesn't really matter to one extent, because as soon as you signal, okay, we're done hiking, like we're confident enough we're going to stay here longer, but we're done hiking, people buy bonds, that'll push down yields, which softens financial conditions. It's kind of like cutting. And so it's like the opposite. Looser financial conditions is almost the same as JPOW cutting, which is great. You don't actually need them to cut. And then everything rallies. Risk assets, Bitcoin, real estate, solar, everything gets better. And we're really close to that. JPOW really, I think, indicated that today. The second part of your question was, what was the second one? Oh, the higher for longer part. On higher for longer, how much does that matter? I mean, it matters, but I think it matters less than what the market does. So that's like the short answer of that, since I gave a long answer to the first one.
Got it. Thanks.
I actually got an email today from my high yield savings that was like, hey, even though rates did not go up today, we're actually going to increase yours from 4.8 to 5%. So I wonder if they were actually expecting the rates to go up and they had that email prepped
anyway.
Yeah, last minute it's like, oh, say never mind.
Change the first line.
Yeah, exactly.
That is interesting. I think it's also good marketing that these companies, they kind of trickle up their rates a little bit. You know, you go to like 4.75 and then you're like, now we're at 4.8. And it's like, now we're at 5.
It's competitive.
Of course. Everybody wants those deposits, man. Everybody wants the deposits.
Okay, last earnings, then we can move on.
Yeah.
So DoorDash, record orders on DoorDash. They seem to be killing it right now.
Wow.
Compared to the same quarter last year, 24% increase in orders. Revenue increased 27%, which absolutely beat expectations. And fun little fact on the app now, there's a little pop-up that warns you that if you don't tip them, your order might be delayed. And it actually kind of got me thinking, it's like, yeah, with the fees, with the tip, with the fact that if you actually compare the prices through DoorDash compared to the actual restaurant, they usually mark it up there too. Like the base fees are up.
Interesting.
How do people keep affording DoorDash? Like all my paycheck to paycheck friends are doing this. How do they afford that luxury?
So J-Pow actually answered that question today. He said, DoorDash go up. No, he didn't say that. No, J-Pow did answer that question, though, indirectly. He said that real wages are now above, like wage growth is above the rate of inflation growth. So your paycheck to paycheck friends are actually seeing their paychecks go further than they had been when the rate of inflation was higher. So you're starting to make, and this is the entire economy. I know there are going to be people who hear this and they're like, well, that's not true for me. Well, duh, it's not going to be
with
true
our
for everyone.
Halloween candy.
Yeah, dude, I know we got to talk about that. We'll talk about that. It's like, that's funny. Yeah, look, that makes sense. That would align roughly with that. And that's interesting. I wonder if that is a good thing for companies like DoorDash. I would have never made that connection had it not been brought up.
Well,
so good job.
Something super interesting is like Panda Express is almost the exact same if you go in person to pick it up or DoorDash it.
In
It's
terms of
almost
price.
the exact same price. So it's like, why would I go? Like, it's so easy just to DoorDash it. It's
I
ridiculous.
feel like that's rare. That's
Yeah,
interesting.
It's a weird arb that I've found that's like,
Panda Express.
It's like-
I love that company. I can't eat there regularly because I don't think it's necessarily the most healthy food. I mean, it's all, even the veggies, it's all just like lots of vegetable oil and omega 6s. It's so great. Yeah. But you need the omega 9s and they don't cook with those, and you need the omega 3s, which I guess you can get, but all their fish or their like shrimp is all sauced up and stuff. But anyway, that's interesting. You know, Wendy's. I actually ordered, talking about healthy foods, and here I am talking about Wendy's. But I ordered Wendy's for the kids the other night.
It's like fancy McDonald's, right?
Yeah. It was actually really cheap to deliver.
I'm telling you, it's odd.
It was like $2 or $3.
The stigma is that it's way more expensive. It's like, oh, you're going to get screwed. You're going to get screwed. And you're like, wait, it's not that bad.
But I don't know. That is interesting. So DoorDash, I'm also surprised. I just pulled up their statements. They had, $1.1 billion of operating cash flow. Holy crap. They had a net loss of $409 million. But damn, dude, $1.1 billion of cash flow. They're actually kicking butt. They got $2.4 billion of cash. They actually rebought their stock too. $700 million. Wow. How's their stock performing? Oh, it's up 7% in after hours.
7.5 and after, yeah.
Yeah, it's up 68% year to date. They're doing well. That's very impressive. How well they're doing. They might. I wonder. Boy, they're not even profitable yet. That'd be very interesting if they can get to profitability. I mean, their margins right now. Boy, I mean, obviously they're negative because they lose money. But sales and marketing. Sales and marketing went up about 15-ish%. So they're still spending R&D about 10% up. They did cut a little bit on G&A, probably just to try to signal to the market that we're working on cutting. But they're getting closer to profitability. Their loss from operations was only $100 million, so only $100 million. Just quickly roll that out. That's just another 100.
As soon
Anyway,
as they find out how to steal the rest of the tips from their employees, they'll be solid.
Oh,
Let's move on to Disney.
Oh, yeah. Oh, before that, yeah, Halloween candy. We've never run out before. We always spend like about $1,000 on Halloween candy every year because we do the full-size candy bars. And we've never run out before. And this year, I mean, there are a lot of people, but this year we ran out probably like 30 minutes early, usually towards the end of the night. And we've done this now for 8 years where we do the full-size candy bars. It started in 2015. And usually we give out the full-size candy bars, and towards the end of the night, they're like, we start giving like 2 or 3 full-size candy bars per person away, and they're, they've gone up. They're like $1.29 now per full-size candy bar. They used to be 99 cents, and then you get some of the multi-packs were like 89 cents. It's all more expensive now. But I didn't think because I always thought, oh, well, we always have too much. But no, that $1,000 vanished faster than expected. Yeah.
To fact check myself before we go to Disney, apparently Panda Express is way cheaper than I thought because it is actually double the price to order DoorDash than pick it up.
Oh, wow.
But I don't know if it's cheaper because it's on the internet.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's cheaper because it's on the internet. Like I can place my order and go pick it up versus DoorDash. DoorDash, everything includes about $26 to get like 3 sides and your pasta, your noodles or whatever.
Yeah.
But to pick it up, it says it's only $12.45, which just seems extremely cheap for some reason.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Odd.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah. Well, I mean, DoorDash is figuring out how to make money, so it's probably they have to get you at like every layer, right? So add a little bit of a premium to the food that you're ordering. Add a little bit of a service fee. I don't know if the delivery and service fee is the same or if they've separated.
2 separate fees.
To see, it's 2 separate fees, right? Then they're probably taking a rev share from the employee, or not the employee, the worker who's going to pick it up. Like, oh, if you get tipped $5, we're taking 20% of that. I don't know if that's true.
I'm not sure about
I
that.
think they get 100% of tips.
Is that true? Okay. I
think so.
Either way, like they've got you can't have like one big, here's your DoorDash premium, otherwise people won't go for it. You got to like layer all the fees to really like entice people to buy. It's kind of like Airbnb. It's like it's the Airbnb fee, it's the cleaning fee, it's all the little BS that's pissed people off so much about Airbnb. But that's how you make money if you're doing this kind of stuff. So good on DoorDash.
I feel like part of why you ran out of Halloween candy this year, too, is your house is starting to get a reputation. Last night, I don't know if you were there right when this happened, but someone showed up on a dirt bike, high-vis suit, got a chicken costume behind, came, got the candy, and then left. I was like, dude, that dude just commuted to come get candy from your house.
he DoorDashed it.
Yeah,
he DoorDashed Kevin's house.
That's funny.
All right, so Disney is set to acquire the remainder of Hulu. They were already a majority owner, but they are purchasing the last 33% of Comcast's stake. It's $8.61 billion for that, which is fair market value for it. And I have a quote here. It says, the acquisition of Comcast stake in Hulu at fair market share will further Disney's streaming objectives. And this from their CEO, who is also floating the idea of selling off its ABC division. I think he's also on the chair for ABC, like on the board, for ABC. But he said he was going to sell off the ABC division and is on the hunt for a strategic partner for ESPN as they're aiming to transition away from the linear TV business and go into the more of the streaming thing.
Okay, 2 things to unpack there. One, why does increasing if you're already majority owner, why does increasing your stake 33% change anything?
I mean, you want the profit from it. You're making all these investments in it, so you want 100% of the profit. So it's just bullish on Hulu. Is what it is, yeah.
And then 2, streaming is like such a loss leader. Why does he want to continue to increase his stake? Like you said, is trying to get out of the TV business. Maybe it's better than TV streaming, but streaming is such a loss leader. It's so competitive with Netflix, with all these other platforms.
It's SaaS, right? Any software as service is like, how can we get all these suckers paying us a small monthly fee, including myself, I pay for it too. How can we get all these people paying this monthly fee so that way, no matter what we do, we have this consistent rev money coming in every year. And the idea is that eventually that goes profitable and that you have this consistent money coming in profitable all the time. That's the hope. So I think it's just constantly trying to build users rather than lose users. So far, who actually goes and doesn't want Netflix or these streaming services? Like if you have kids or whatever, it's tough. You got to have these services. So it makes sense for families to opt in, and I think that's what's happening. And even sometimes if there's no content, like if it's a content dry spell, are you really going in there and canceling your subscription and then re-signing up? It's the smart thing to do, but nobody does it. Subscriptions are so sticky. So these businesses are looking to take advantage of one of the best ways to make money from people. It's a subscription.
I've known people who found out I'm paying for 2 Netflix subscriptions, 2 Spotify's. It's been a year. I've never noticed. Yeah, they kind of sneak those in there.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I guess we can move on from markets here and we can go to some more Israel-Palestine updates.
Yeah, let's do it. Israel-Palestine, what do we got?
So you remember yesterday we were talking about the attack they did on the largest refugee camp in Gaza.
Yes.
They killed 50 more Palestinians and injured.
That was in the West Bank.
No, this was in Gaza.
That was in Gaza. Okay.
Jabalia. It's just north of Gaza City, so very, very close to the border. So I said the number was 200 people injured yesterday. Today, the number was updated to just 150. So I think that one included deaths.
Just 150. It's better than, yeah.
Well, they attacked again today.
Oh.
So they killed another Hamas commander. And they said that these attacks they are doing based on very, very precise intel that they're getting. So they're really targeting.
That's their propaganda, of course.
Well,
But yeah,
yes.
I mean, that makes sense if you're going to say that. Like, it makes sense to say
Yeah,
that.
just dropping bombs. Going, I hope we killed someone so we could leader so we could.
We know where they are. And they probably do, honestly. I mean, the amount of technology they get from the United States, oh my gosh, it's scary.
Yet they never knew that beginning of the October, like the attack was happening.
I that blows my mind. It blows my mind. And like, I don't want to take the jaded POV. I want to believe that, it was just an oopsie doopsies. It was a holiday. They've been getting attacked for decades, right? And the Iron Dome just protects. But this actual invasion, I don't know. Maybe they just, I don't know. I don't know that we'll ever know.
Yeah, we'll keep diving into it. Hamas also gave a statement out today, but we'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Well, first IDF statement on this was that, I mentioned it was based on precise intelligence, but they said, and I kind of agree with this, Hamas deliberately builds its terror infrastructure under, around, and within civilian buildings, intentionally endangering Gazan civilians.
Right. Well, what they do is, I mean, think about it. Like, you have to be able to build somewhere. So what do? Well, you're not going to build in the middle of the street because how is that functional? Like, everybody sees it. So you have to build inside residences where people live. And so it's like, hey, can we go build a tunnel in your 4th bedroom that you're not using, and then we're going to pay you, I don't know, $100 a month or whatever it is.
Or we won't kill you.
That's another option, yeah. Oh, that's terrible.
We don't have a budget, but we'll let you live if you let us dig a hole in your living room.
Well, either way, God, it's so terrible. It's terrible. It's not something to laugh about, but that was a funny response. And it's also quite possibly true. It's quite possibly true. But they make money with these tunnel networks, right? Because, you can essentially smuggle weapons through these. You could do whatever you want in these tunnels, but Hamas controls them. So if somebody else wants to utilize the tunnels, Hamas can basically rent them out, the usage of these tunnels. So they make money off these tunnels, and that's how they partly how they fund their operation. But yeah, I mean, they are built in people's homes because, again, you can't do it in broad daylight. And this is not such a barren place that you're just in the middle of the desert everywhere. Those are some of the videos that we see of like tanks rolling across the desert and the crossings. But much of the Gaza Strip, where at least the people live, it's just very, very tightly built cities of apartment buildings. It's all tunnels, man.
Extremely dense. We're talking like downtown London, Philadelphia, like those types of cities, that level of density in Gaza.
That's a good comparison. Yeah. So what you said Israel released a statement?
Yeah, well, Palestine, Hamas did. Do you want to go ahead? You read it more in depth than I did. Do you want to cover it, Mikey?
Sure. Let me find what page that was on.
It's at the bottom of page 2, 3.
Or keep going with wherever you were. I don't want to.
Well, Hamas's statement, this is per the New York Post. They vowed to repeat the same attacks that they did on Israel at the beginning of the month, or beginning of last month now. They said, we'll vow to repeat the attacks again and again until Israel is completely destroyed. This was given on a Lebanese TV interview, and then it was just aired on British networks today.
That's so weird because it seems like they've been trying to request, hey, like, stop attacking us and we'll release hostages. It seemed like they were trying to tone down their rhetoric because they're getting decimated by Israel. So it's actually surprising to see them escalate. That's unfortunate.
Yeah,
I feel like it's disorganized. Like, that's why.
Yeah,
I'm sure people
probably
have different thoughts on it there.
There's probably different organizations within what we know as Hamas. There's probably different branches, different people. Yeah. But they continue to say, like, they're, quote, they're willing to pay a price. And we are called the nation of martyrs and are proud to sacrifice martyrs. Israel is a country that has no place in our land. We must remove that country because it constitutes a security, military, and political catastrophe to the Arab Islamic nations and must be finished. We are not ashamed to say this with full force. We must teach Israel a lesson that we will do this again and again.
Well, I mean, that right there is the kind of statement that makes sure Israel doesn't agree to a ceasefire. That right there is just adding fuel to the fire, and it then makes you wonder, like, did somebody actually prove that this person is Hamas? Because what if it wasn't even like a Hamas person, somebody pretending to be Hamas? They make the statement, it's like some CIA agent or someone sponsored by a CIA agent, right? Just to keep justifying the attack. Who knows? Yeah. Nobody freaking knows.
No, I would have disagreed with you, but as soon as you said that, I remember the two people that walked out of the Twitter headquarters with the cardboard boxes. Like, not to make light of the situation, but something like everybody believed it because
Ligma Johnson.
They had the boxes. Like, everybody believed. Like, they just got fired. Like, what was it like? And everybody believed them. It was the craziest thing.
It was just like two randos from the internet pretending they got worked at Twitter.
Like, I wonder if, like, you go, I'm not suggesting anybody do this, but imagine you go to Palestine right now, you find where reporters are, and you're wearing a green headband or whatever with a black outfit. And you walk up
all
and
you
say,
could see
I'm
was
with
his
Hamas.
eyes like this. You couldn't see anything else.
Of course,
Yeah.
And then you say you're with Hamas. You're a political leader with Hamas. You say whatever the hell you want.
Yeah.
Nobody freaking knows.
Yeah.
So amid all this, Palestinians have actually started attacking a new target, and it's their own rulers. But this is not in Gaza. This is actually in West Bank, and this is per an LA Times piece that I read today. It says that in West Bank, Palestinians proceeded to or protested the Palestinian Authority, which eventually led to gunfire. So this was triggered by Israel's attack on the large refugee camp in Gaza. So they started these protests, and it wasn't because they're trying to attack Palestine. They were mad that Palestine wasn't doing a good enough job protecting them.
Right.
In fact, they're quoted as saying, where was it here? Well, like, yeah, there we go. They were discussed by the inability to protect its own people and stand up to Israel, and they stated that its leaders are more concerned with their own survival. So
And that doesn't surprise me that it's almost turning into like an every man for themselves. I mean, it's like, imagine if, like all the movies you see, there's like an apocalypse, right? There's no government basically anymore. You can't rely on police services. So what do? You grab a gun, you take control yourself. It's terrible. It's just pure lawlessness.
Yeah, it's very different from Russia v. Ukraine because it's like Russia, Ukraine. The only other time it was a little bit more convoluted was when Prigozhin was involved because it's like Prigozhin and his team are with Russia, but Putin and Prigozhin hate each other. Like that, like this is way more confusing because there's so many different parts to it.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I know. So I mean, geez, it's just terrible. Okay, what else?
Yeah, they were attacking a government building, and so like police basically came to try to break up the demonstration. That's when they returned fire, so it turned into a whole brawl. Don't know how many people were confirmed dead. Like the number hasn't been released yet, but it does seem like there were some casualties there.
Terrible.
So the Rafah border now been opened, and we're seeing people able to evacuate Gaza at this point. For the first time since this conflict started, we're seeing foreign nationals and injured Palestinians having a way out, like a direct route out, and that's through Egypt. So the numbers I have, 81 severely injured Palestinians. They're expected to cross today. 361 foreign passport holders have also left, 76 of those on their way to Cairo. A lot of the other ones flying back to wherever they come from. That includes Austria, UK, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Italy, Japan. Egyptian officials said they were expecting many more to come through today, but for 130 of them, they either haven't made it to the border yet, or they did make it, but refused to cross without their family there. Because, sometimes you have, like, I have dual citizenship, my spouse doesn't, all that. And so, like, a lot of these people were refusing to leave without their family.
Yeah. I read a little bit further on this in the Wall Street Journal. It was really interesting. So this was kind of like a two-phase plan. There may be some more phases that I don't know about. But Egypt only agreed to this if they would send humanitarian aid first. So that was the United States' first objective, is like, Egypt will agree to let people through the country as long as they can get aid through first, which is interesting for Egypt because Egypt's like, we're only going to help if you help them first. It's like, okay. But like, there's a little bit of confusion with why that piece needed to be there. Obviously, it's a good thing that happened, but it's just like, why? The second thing is they appear to have a list posted on the wall of the people that were able to pass through that day, none of which were Americans, Brits, or Canadians, except for a few working international organizations. So there was like a 42-year-old academic U.S. citizen visiting her husband's family in Gaza when the war broke out. And she's American, so she's assuming that she, like, since America, like, brokered their deal, that they'd be able to go through.
Right.
Her name was not on the list.
Interesting.
And so she's like, it was kind of, I seems simple, but it was like a little heroic that she could have thrown a huge fit, but she's like, it's okay. We'll check again tomorrow. It's not a big deal. So, like, you could have been super frustrated, which it was kind of inspiring for me because you're going through a war. Like, you don't want to be there. You're supposed to be on vacation.
That's a really interesting sort of anecdote of an individual person and the struggles out of there. But when I hear this about the families and not going through without their families, I totally get that.
Yep.
If there's a list and it's like your name's on it, but your family can't go through, I guess we're staying with the family. I wouldn't leave my family.
Yep.
Yeah. There's no way.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
And just to clarify, even though the U.S. helped to coordinate this whole thing, was actually brokered by Qatar, which we were looking at per capita as one of the wealthiest countries in the world.
It was, what was it, either the 5th or the 8th largest? I have
think
that here.
U.S. was
5th.
8th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what it was. The United States is the 8th. or this is a ranking of GDP per capita, which just means per head. So you take whatever the GDP is and you divide it by the population. That includes children and everything. The United States comes in with a GDP per capita of $76,000. And Qatar comes in at $114,000. A little bit of oil money over there. Number one, by the way, Luxembourg with $142,000 per head.
They're wealthy,
but they're
and
like 5 people that live there.
Exactly. That's a tiny country.
Yeah, it's 640,000. Wow, that's smaller than the county we're in right now.
That is
pretty nuts.
Yeah.
Max in the comment says Biden said Americans will get across today. It doesn't say where it's posted, so I'm not sure. Not sure the sources on that.
Yeah, thank you for that. Hundreds of dual citizens injured. Okay. Yeah. All right. It's good to see that happen. Remember when we were talking about this earlier when this all broke out the first time? We were wondering, okay, why would Egypt not allow people through the crossing? We're like, because they want something, right? And sure enough, we want aid, or just another way of saying
still doesn't
money.
make sense.
Money and stuff.
I still don't see how Egypt directly benefits from this. I wonder if Egypt was paid to get the aid through.
100%.
Yeah,
that's
I'm willing to bet
totally
too, yeah.
totally it.
It's like you have to use.
Well, think about it. If you close the border and you're the only way out for people, and then you have an airport that people can travel through or whatever, you just leave the border shut. All the disaster happens, and then you don't even have to pick up the phone. America calls you. Hey, we need you guys to open the border. Like, well, it's going to cost you. What do you need? We need aid for all the people in there because we don't want to service it, right? We don't want, like, if we open the border, all those people come across and then they take Egyptian medicine and Egyptian hospitals, Egyptian food or whatever. So it's like, you need to feed them all and help them live and survive and give them medicine and a place to stay and everything, and then pay us as well. Probably.
So how did that get voted out? Like Qatar? Did Qatar pay for that? Who paid for that?
It's probably the United States, but it's a negotiation, right?
Will it come through? Will that come through in a deal with the House of Representatives?
No. This is all like executive authority. This is just part of defense spending. It's like we'll probably never know. I mean, there's a website you can go to see what foreign affairs spending is, and you'll probably see a bump in that for Egypt. Almost certainly, I would
You'd be
guarantee
updated that
it.
fast?
No. This is like an annual release of spending of the United States, because we give international funding to almost every country that exists.
Yeah,
It's crazy. Like
Israel, Egypt, they're both getting funding from us. Absolutely.
U.S. foreign aid. It's like by annual. There's a U.S. foreign aid website.
I have the PDF right here of 2023.
Yeah, foreignassistance.gov. That's where people can go if they want to look at it themselves. Foreignassistance.gov. And it shows you all the money we give to different countries. You could actually go down to country and you could just type in Egypt. And the United States provides about $200 million to Egypt per year. And that's broken into emergency food assistance, $18 million, a bunch of different schools, USAID funding, all this. And it's just going to be earmarked into some new organizations they have. Think about it. The president in Egypt could be like, we have these 5 new organizations that we really need help getting funded or whatever. And it'll just be another one of those things. Those are the sort of negotiations that get deals done. It's like, what do you need? What is this? What is it going to make it easy? Like, how are we going to make this easy to make it happen? Like, well, if we had this done, okay, done. Boom, Egypt opens the border. Simple.
In Egypt and Gaza, they've had a very convoluted history. That used to be an open border. Then Egypt closed it and flooded all the tunnels because they were getting all the suicide bombers coming in. And then Egypt's government changed, and they basically had Muslim Brotherhood in charge. They reopened the border temporarily in, this was like 2013-ish or something like that. And then it shifted again. They closed it again. So it's been like very convoluted. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's some like regional politics happening over there too that were involved in this.
Yeah.
But as far as I know, this was like I think it was entirely brokered by Qatar and then entirely paid for by the U.S.
Probably.
I think that's how that worked.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I completely agree with that.
Qatar took their commission.
Probably.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I'm just to see if there are like individual earmarks. Like I click on emergency food assistance, and it's $18 million for 2022. And then summary, and it just tells you $18 million. Then there's a little button that says supporting documents. So I click that and it says, no public supporting documents found. So it's like, no. Is it transparent? No. Is it happening? Almost certainly. So
someone in the comments asked, we're sending them $200 million, and what's their GDP?
$400 billion
Yeah,
is
so
their
drop
GDP.
in the bucket.
No, I mean, it is, but like the way to look at it is remember, GDP is different from how much money the government makes.
True.
Right? Because the government has a lot of expenses. So $200 million could be a big difference for a country, even with a $400 million or $1 billion GDP. I mean, what our GDP is $23 billion. And, our deficit is like $32 trillion. Right? Where am I? $1 trillion. It's insane. But look, we spend $900-ish billion a year on the Department of Defense. If there was like a bigger United States and there's like, here's an extra 10 billies, maybe proportionately it's not a lot compared to a 900, but it's like, hey, I could buy a bunch of tanks now or a bunch of planes I couldn't buy before.
Is there a concern it's become kind of a meme, but in all seriousness, is there a concern that this money does become fungible and fund other things that we don't have control over?
Oh, of course. Absolutely. Yeah. 110%. But that's
kind of what got us into this mess a little bit, isn't it?
Well, I think with Iran, yeah, maybe. I think the way to look at it is, the government tries to. One of the benefits of the government providing foreign aid is they also then require, like, let us do inspections, and so now we get to sneak around where we shouldn't otherwise be sneaking around. It's just another way for like the CIA to get more intel and stuff. Obviously, there's still going to be failures, but it's all part of this big system and big game.
Don't sneak around in Egypt. You're going to get mugged.
No.
For tourism, I've heard a lot of negative things, especially in the last couple decades of visiting Egypt.
Wow.
A lot of people. If you look foreign at all, like, at least try to dress local and that kind of thing if you're ever traveling. But Egypt's not very much the safest place, especially not for women.
Wow. That's very interesting. Oh, worth noting, I just got the statistic here. So even though they have a $400 billion GDP, their government revenues are about $43 billion, so roughly about 10% of the GDP. And 200 million then is a little bit of a larger dent, obviously. 200 into 4. It's still,
like
what is that? Half a percent. Yeah, 0.5%. It's not bad, though. An extra 0.5%, right? So it does go most 50% of that money goes to education in Egypt. Most of the rest goes to foreign aid. So, all right. What else do we have with Israel?
Before we go into the next one, I will say we've been getting a ton of really cool emails about people being really excited for HouseHack.
Oh, yeah, it's been a crazy day. Well, it's the fundraiser is closing. It makes sense. Yeah, you can still email us at ir@househack.com if you've got questions. And also, maybe let's turn on the regular chat here. If anybody has questions on HouseHack, I suppose it would be reasonable to answer some questions. So I'm just going to open up the chat here. Okay, I opened up the chat. So if anybody has HouseHack questions, go ahead and ask away.
Or email McKay. He'll be up late. That's all I have on Israel-Palestine, unless you guys have anything to add.
No, I think that's, I'm really, really hopeful that this starts relaxing. Mostly because, there's so much uncertainty right now. And I want to just start being able to check things off the list. Like, we got a Speaker of the House, right? No government shutdown. Let's get that checked off. Let's get Russia, Ukraine. Let's get Middle East. Let's get involved. And maybe that's just wishful thinking. Maybe you could just never get involved. But like, here's another one, which I think might actually lead into our next topic, which is China, U.S. to meet for a rare nuclear arms talk. I love that. That has not happened since the Obama administration. Donald Trump was super anti-China. It was just like, we're going to tax, we're going to tax. There was so much anti-China rhetoric during the Trump admin that every day it felt like the only thing there was to talk about in the stock market was, here we go again, China-U.S. trade war. Big trade war. Big, huge. Nobody knows trade war better than Donald Trump.
Yeah. So. Meet with President Xi Jinping. I got to stop making fun of him. I still have a Chinese visa, and if I ever want to go over there again, I got to stop talking crap. But anyway, next month. So this makes it, like you said, this is a significant moment, too, because it's been a long time since anything like this has happened. Our relationships have been increasingly hostile, especially with the previous administration. So this is just a really good step in the right direction. And so this trip...
Wait, are you bagging on Trump?
This trip also... you know who actually went over there? I don't know if you guys knew about this, but Newsom was over there in China.
Yeah, at the Tesla Giga Shanghai, right?
Yeah.
He is so setting up for a presidential run.
Yeah, it is interesting that, I don't know if it correlates at all, but Biden goes there as soon as Newsom gets back. Like,
He was like the canary, like make sure like Newsom makes it back alive, and then I'll go next.
Could you breathe okay?
Or I wonder if Newsom heard that Biden was going to go. He wanted to steal the thunder for himself and get some news.
Well, also, not only was Newsom over there, but a Chinese foreign minister, he was in the United States at the same time, too. So they both made it back. I guess they both had good things to say.
Am I mad?
Meeting.
I'm honestly not that mad. Like,
yeah, it's a good thing. Yes. It's normalizing relationships between the United States, China, quite frankly, even Russia. Normalizing relationships is very, very important, because otherwise what happens when relationships are strained? You get, China potentially invading Taiwan. You get, Russia invading Ukraine. These are all from strained relations, problems that haven't been solved. It's a problem.
So we don't know exactly when the meeting is going to happen. You said you saw something about next week. I was seeing something about the week after. But from what I can tell, it's going to be held in San Francisco.
Wow. Yeah, well, cool. I mean, they won't be able to go to, I think, the McDonald's. They just closed down a McDonald's in San Francisco. I don't know if it was just one store or what, but it's like
crime.
Yeah,
they also
it's bad when McDonald's is closing. Like I feel when I go to McDonald's, I usually feel like you need a gun to be in some of the McDonald's. It's not like the most safe place. I like to. I mean, let me put it this way: when I used to be a police explorer, we'd always get the freaking calls to the McDonald's. I don't know what it was in our town, but it's always the McDonald's. It was never Burger King. And I'm like, the nice thing is, if you got a call at one of those places after you dealt with the call, you could order some fries or a snack or whatever because you're already there.
Yeah.
It was always McDonald's. I don't know. I don't know. Does anybody? Am I have you ever felt like you went into McDonald's and it was super clean? I don't know. I haven't ever really felt that. Nope. It's cheap fast food. I get it. But
McDonald's is a judgment-free zone. That's why I go. Nobody would judge.
Yeah, it says here, 235 Front Street McDonald's is closed as of Friday, October 27th, citing high office building vacancy rates and low visitor trends that haven't recovered since the pandemic.
Office? Was it a corporate?
It was near office buildings, yeah. I mean, most of those office buildings are empty right now. It's crazy. It is. Yeah, but, okay, yeah, so that's interesting. They're holding that deal or that visit in San Francisco. Somewhat makes sense because it's just a close destination, closer for China.
Yeah, fair.
A little less air travel for them.
It's a direct flight. When I've done it from San Francisco to Beijing, it's like a 13-hour flight. Feels like getting on a bus. I know it's long, but it's so long. It beats all these connecting flights when we go to most parts of Europe.
Oh my gosh, yeah. If you're going to do a 13-hour flight, you don't want to do connecting.
And that time change is wild too. Is it not?
It's pretty wild. And also, all of China is under one time zone. As huge of a country as that is. Unlike Russia, which has 13 time zones, China is almost the same width, but has one.
That's very weird. Okay, what else?
So a little bit more on China. This is an interesting piece in Foreign Affairs about how the U.S. can conquer China. So this is talking about how the U.S. basically we want competition with China, right? We don't want conflict with China. And in the next 10 years, in the next decade, we're expecting to see our difference in GDP shrink from $7 trillion to $4 trillion. And so this obviously, China has been growing, for decades now. Their growth has been absolutely significant. So with this being the case, how do we conquer China in a way that works in 2023? I like to equate it to playing a game of Civilization, where you get far enough into the game and you can't do a military victory anymore. You got to do diplomatic victory, cultural victory, right? That kind of thing. So what I'm seeing here is after 2033, so 10 years from now, China is expected to face issues that will impede growth. For example, one of the things being an aging population. And this timeline could explain Biden's strategies of deglobalization and isolation of China that we've been seeing. So his big push of bringing manufacturing back to the United States. That's one example. Or just in general, reducing our dependence on them, or how we've been going around the world trying to insert ourselves as the police, where we see China kind of trying to insert themselves as the police. And so what it says here, it's could the feat of stagnation post-2033 lead President Xi to act even more ambitiously, right? That's a question we have. Are they going to take advantage and attack Taiwan? Realistically, Kevin, how likely do you think it is that we're going to see a Taiwan invasion in our lifetimes at any point?
Yeah, that's such an interesting question. This foreign affairs piece was great because you're right. They talk about this narrowing of GDP between China and the United States for at least the next 10 years, but this sort of capitalistic approach that China takes could actually impede their growth, and that's not helped by the fact that, like you said, Biden's now chip restrictions, technology restrictions, and they just end up stealing this sort of technology anyway, which is kind of sad. But China, I think, would benefit from much better, and so would the United States, from much more streamlined, capitalistic, integrated relationships. And the more we can do that, the more we can lessen the risk of China invading Taiwan. So like this nuclear relationship, that arms talk that we're having with China on Monday, that's a good thing. We should have more discussions with China, more partnerships with China, and not purposefully try to sandbag them. Let them sandbag themselves, which is really what this is talking about. The foreign affairs piece is like, look, they're sandbagging themselves because, A, you have the aging population. Well, that's because of the one-child policy that they had for such a long time. Then you have not only that hitting, but you also have these, this goal of common prosperity, which is like, hey, let's limit the growth of companies or innovators like Jack Ma. Remember the Jack Ma disaster and disappears? It's like the government's really trying to put lids on capitalists who are innovating and bringing GDP to China. Well, that's going to bite them in the butt. That's basically what Foreign Affairs here is saying. Foreign Affairs Magazine. It's a great, fantastic piece. And their recommendation, which I totally agree with, is how do we integrate with China to make a win-win relationship to where we minimize the odds of a Taiwanese war? I think that there is a risk, and people get mad when I say this, but there's a risk of a Trump presidency creating so much more tension with China that you will increase the odds of conflict with Taiwan. So I would say Trump presidency, higher likelihood of a Chinese Taiwan invasion. I still probably see it as like a 10% issue. You keep and Trump could get in and end up having okay relations with China. I just don't see that as likely because that's like his campaign promise, right? If you don't end up causing problems, more issues with China, and we can normalize relations like this arms discussion that's happening, and we can normalize, I think we're probably more in the 5% neighborhood.
Okay, thoughts?
I would have never predicted Russia versus Ukraine. So, I mean, I just can't predict. Like, for me, predicting a war is so, like, it's just throwing a number at the wall.
Who knows? Yeah.
I do think if something ever were to happen, it'll be more of an accident than it would be an invasion. Like a Chinese fighter accidentally doing something rather than a country representation. But like that might spark something greater.
Accidentally crashing into the jet that it's intercepting, flying a couple feet away from the wing.
Yeah,
something like that could cause an accidental spark. I could see an incident more than an invasion.
Okay. All right.
Next.
We can touch on Russia, and then we'll do a little bit of U.S. politics, and we'll be done. So, a piece from The Economist here about Russia's new budget and what it reveals about the war in Ukraine. So this is all according to Russia One, which is state-funded media over there. But there's apparently this large bread factory in a town called Tambov. And I mean, I'm talking like large-scale factory. It's not like a small little bakery. But they received a request from the Russian military last year to retool their assembly line, which they did. And now they assemble 250 military drones per month. A bread factory.
Wow.
So this is based on a larger piece about Russia's new budget, which was passed just the other week, October 26th. And it says that defense spending in 2024 is going to be increased by nearly 70% to 10.8 trillion rubles, which is nearly a third of the total expenditure and almost 3 times what was forecast in 2021.
3x the military spending.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, but they have their own money printers, so they could just keep printing these rubles, right? I just wonder what the value of the ruble has been. I'm going to take a look at this. If we go 1 ruble to USD, that sucker over the last year is down 33%. In the past 5 years, the value of that currency is down 26%. So, I mean, it hasn't gone. I actually thought it would have dropped much more than that.
I think it dropped substantially. You could check if you have it on your screen, but I think it dropped substantially when they invaded Ukraine, but then kind of bounced back.
It did substantially. Yeah, it was down over the last 5 years. If I go from 5 years ago to that invasion, it was down 45%. Then actually rallied higher to a positive for a period of time. It was actually up 16% on a 5-year period for a period of time there. And now it's back down 30%. It's because they're just printing more, of course.
And the oil prices have been going up.
Oil prices went up. They're like $85 for Brent right now, which I mean, there was a period of time we're sitting there in like the $60 range. So yeah, that does help.
That kind of counterbalanced it there.
Yep.
But so they're also mentioning on this piece military outlays, so equipment, salaries, payments of the families for soldiers killed, things like that. They're going to be 3 times higher than spending on education, healthcare, and the environment combined. And actually, I have this on my screen right now. This shows their budget like in the previous decade leading up to it, and this is forecast 2023 and 2024. But we could see defense kind of going up substantially compared to everything else, and it's just kind of mind blowing to me that like healthcare, education, these are things that are going to suffer. Which the way I see that is, even though in the short term, right, this could be really, really good for them and their invasion in Ukraine, long term.
It's terrible.
You've suffered in so many different categories.
But see,
here.
the U.S. government knows this. They know that if you shift your country's focus to war, the longer it lasts, the weaker your entire economy becomes. Every industrialist or entrepreneur or business owner or just, enterprise in Russia is suffering from supply chain issues, to less availability of spending, less customers because people, quite frankly, are dying, so you have a population decline. Uncertainty leads people to have less children. People who are fighting in war aren't having children, or creating new children, right? Like all of those things end up affecting your economy 5 to 20 years later. It's way worse than a pandemic. Like that, like war is going to really long-term keep Russia, the Russian economy weaker than it could have been without the war, in my opinion. Now, but then again, on the flip side, Russia's trying to control the Dnipro and the Donetsk, which is where a lot of energy is, oil. So the idea is, well, if we take that, can we then use that extra money to reinvest? Who knows? I think that's why the U.S. government is like, well, let's just keep them at it as long as possible. If we got to do trench warfare for 10 years, whatever, so be it. It just weakens Russia.
Which an interesting thing to note, too, that you kind of reminded me of looking at this graph is they hadn't really spent much on defense, or I guess offense, you should say, leading up to it, which I think is because they expected this to be a very quick invasion of Ukraine, and it wasn't.
That's true. It's a good point. That's a really good point. Yeah, and then hopefully Israel isn't very long, but so far everybody, it just seems to keep getting extended here.
Yeah.
All right, what else?
A little bit of U.S. politics, unless you have something to add on Russia?
No.
All right, let's do U.S. politics. I've only got one topic, and it is that the House, there's going to be a couple people possibly ousted, but the House right now is deciding on whether or not to expel Representative George Santos from Congress.
Yeah, that guy should have been out a long time ago. That guy's a moron and a fraud. The fact that he's still there blows my mind.
Hey, he says he has the right to a fair trial, so he's allegedly a fraud.
Yeah. That'll be interesting.
Yeah, so New York Republicans are putting the motion forward. They need a supermajority, 2/3 vote to actually oust him. But the vote will be held today. Maybe it's already happened during the time of our pod. I'm not sure. But a couple other lawmakers might be on the chopping block here, too. So Rashida Tlaib, apparently due to her criticism of Israel, they accused her of inciting an insurrection in the House office building when she was calling for a ceasefire. And kind of a tit for tat in response, Democrats are putting forward a motion to try to oust Marjorie Taylor Greene for some of her super controversial past actions.
It's just like everybody's trying to impeach everybody right now. The Speaker of the House still has to deal with the whole Biden impeachment thing, which people are letting me think might come out. I mean, I don't know if Biden's going to survive an impeachment, and physically. With how slow Congress is, when are they going to impeach him in 10 years?
I can't decide if this is brilliant or just moronic, because the gridlock system just cultivates this kind of reaction, and that's kind of how this country was established, was on this gridlock. And so it's doing what it was meant to do, where a lot of things are not being pushed forward, but it seems so childish.
Well, it does, yeah, because that's also how you end up getting views and donations for your campaign to get reelected. The people in the House, you're basically always campaigning, because you have an election every frickin' 2 years. You got to get reelected. Yeah. How Nancy was in there for how many years she was in there, it's just crazy, because it's just, honestly, her campaigning was probably just all those insider trades. Oh my goodness.
She probably had a Discord she was selling them into.
Oh, jeez. Okay, so on real estate quickly. First of all, somebody here says, hey, what's the point of buying real estate when it's at peak and interest rates are at peak? It's actually a great question. So the time to buy is when you have peak uncertainty, and what you want to do is utilize that peak uncertainty to negotiate deals to where it doesn't matter if the market crashes or not. You're already building yourself such a great and insulated deal. It doesn't matter if prices come down 10, 20% or whatever. You're buying a good deal at a good price today. And you could use that uncertainty, that pain in markets, to take your time and be patient. You want to be patient. You don't want to go blow all your money. Like if you have money to invest in real estate, I don't think it makes sense, not personalized advice, to just blow it all like in the next 30 days. But I mean, if you think interest rates are trending down over the next year to 2 years, then that'll give some kind of eventual floor to real estate, then there's probably some pain between now and the end of next year, that whether that's this winter, spring, or next winter, that will probably present some really good buying opportunities. So you want to be in the market looking for those opportunities, and we are at HouseHack. So check us out. The company's closing its fundraise tonight, 11:59 p.m. That's just a few hours away. So go to househack.com, read the circular, and consider investing. It is my real estate startup raising money for a 1-to-1 valuation, which is really rare, relatively unheard of. There's also news regarding the Realtor Commission. Jury found the Realtor Association, National Association of Realtors, NAR, conspired to keep commissions high. And this could really, I want to give folks a bottom line on this, because a lot of people have been asking, what does this mean? What this means is you're probably going to start having buyers agents who write offers with their clients and attach to the offer. So I'm just going practical, like I'm skipping all the boring stuff. I'm giving you what's practical. Attached to the offer, agents, instead of attaching like the MLS listing going, oh, you promised to pay me 2.5%, give me my 2.5%. Attached to the offer will probably now be a page that says Realtors compensation. And so the offer might be like, here's your $600,000 offer. Pay the agent $18,000, right? As a commission. Well, now the buyer sees, man, we're basically asking the seller, to sell the house for $582 because we're making them pay that extra 3%. Previously, the buyer would just see $600K and that 3% commission was paid. But now it's bluntly visible to the buyer. So the buyer's probably in the future going to be signing an offer where that buyer's commission is separately in there rather than advertised on the MLS, and therefore by default being included. Now the onus is on the buyer to decide, would I rather just go directly to the listing agent? Being a listing agent is going to be the next frontier for real estate agents. Like the buyer's agents will be a lot fewer. You will see more agents want to be listing agents because your odds of being a dual agent will go up because the fees will be lower for the seller. So that means buyers will probably have less quality representation for buyer's agents. It's not going to pay as well to be a buyer's agent. You're going to have to fight harder for that commission. But it could actually reduce home prices. Just think about that. Home prices theoretically are inflated by the level of real estate commissions and closing transaction fees. So if every home sold with zero commission, homes would be somewhere between 5 to 6% cheaper and more affordable. So it's actually a good thing for housing affordability. It could actually lead home prices to fall, adjust essentially in the future, sell for about 2.5% less. It's nominal. Like if you're an investor, like you don't look at that and go, oh, there's the housing crash. Like that doesn't really matter. But from an actual affordability point of view, it would create more affordability for buyers. It will also lead to a lot harder work for buyers' agents to actually convince buyers to be willing to include those fees in their offers.
Yeah.
That's what I got.
So
Wow.
by when?
So, buy when real estate? Well, let's see. TBD. That is.
Should this affect a buyer?
Well, I think a buyer really has. That's a good question. A buyer should surround themselves with a fiduciary, an agent. Agents are fiduciaries who really has their best interest in mind. So somebody who can educate them about the market, where to buy, how to buy, what not to buy. And if they're using that agent's buyer services, they should be loyal to that agent, right? If they are, unless they're an investor who's buying multiple different properties, if you're a home buyer, you're looking to buy one property, they should use the services of an agent. Whoever brings them that deal and has educated them or whatever should probably buy through them and be willing to pay that commission.
HouseHack always does that. If an agent brings us a deal, they worked to get us that deal.
Yeah, it's a little different because and this is why you have to be very clear when you're an investor. When you're an investor, what you say to agents is, look, we can't be exclusive with an agent because we're buying dozens to hundreds of homes, right? It's impossible in our markets to be exclusive with an agent. That's not possible. So what you do is you just disclose that up front. But if you're a home buyer who needs to be handheld through every step of the process because you've never bought a home, you're afraid of everything. You're afraid of dealing with roofers, electricians, plumbers. You don't know what escrow is. You don't know what a title report is. You don't even know how to call an insurance agent. You need to be handheld through all that crap. You should be paying for that service. It's possible realtors might end up charging buyer's agents like a consulting fee. Like you're an attorney. It's like, hey, you want me as your buyer's agent, you got to fund a retainer. And you pay like a $5,000 retainer like you would do to an attorney, and they work that off on an hourly basis. Possible.
Interesting.
Yep. But it'll definitely make it harder for people to use, because most people, especially on the internet, they're like, I don't need an agent. I could do it all myself. The reason agents have existed for so long, it's been so hard for companies like Redfin to replace them, is because the agents you get with Redfin, like the door opener agents, I mean, the listing agents, they're the ones that have worked for years and have the experience, but usually the door opener agents, they're brand new in the industry. They're getting paid by the hour. They don't have a lot of knowledge about schools, locations, the process, or whatever. And I don't want to paint with a broad brush here, but I'm just saying, if you're a buyer's agent, you're brand new, or rather you're a buyer and you're a brand new buyer, you want a high-quality agent. And that now makes it more inaccessible for people to get a high-quality agent, because high-quality agents aren't going to want to deal with having to sell themselves on that. They already deal with that with the sellers. So just do it over there.
One more question on this, then we can move on to the last couple of things.
I think that's it, actually. But anyway.
I have two things I want to follow up
Okay,
with.
go for it.
If you're going to become a real estate agent, does this affect if you are going to become an agent, if you want to become an agent?
This is a very difficult time to become an agent, but if you could make it in this environment, you'll be able to make it in any environment.
Gotcha.
It won't matter. It won't matter in the long term, yeah.
Today wrapped up the FTX trial. Today was the last day and deliberations with the jury start. I've been following this account pretty closely on Twitter. They've been doing a very good job at keeping me up to date with the trial. They said that the closing argument of SBF's defense team was abysmal. They're claiming that the prosecution is, quote, bullying Sam by making fun of his hair, the way he dresses, his appearance. They claim he made fun of his nervous tics and made Sam seem like he was a calculated villain. They're trying to say all of this was an honest mistake, and when you're growing as big as Sam does, you do miss things in the cracks. Quote, making mistakes is not a crime, quote. They're trying to spin gold.
That's what the defense is saying.
That's what the defense was saying, that making mistakes is not a crime. They're trying to say this was all just a big mistake, getting as popular as fast as he did. That was pretty much their closing statement, which this account just says he's toast. Like, it's going to be a deliberation and
I don't know who this person is in terms of the Twitter account or whatever, where they're passing some of these updates on. I know people are in the courts and they're like tweeting and stuff like that. But this guy's screwed, man. You're so screwed. Like, the buck stops with the CEO of the company. That's the way it works. And if you're running a Ponzi, you can't call that a mistake.
Yeah.
Like, this guy's going to jail. There are a lot of people though who do not think he's going to go to jail because he's one of them. And it's basically people on the right saying, "Oh, well, he's donated too much money to the leftists to go to jail."
What's your prediction?
That's pretty jaded. I'm not that jaded. Like, I'm jaded, but I'm like, no, this guy's gonna go to jail.
What's your prediction? Life? Less than 50 years? What do you think? That's what people are asking for predictions for when the jury comes back.
Oh, that's interesting.
Is he? Because
somebody like him, it should be no less than 25 years, in my opinion, and that's a long time. But it should be no less than that. I don't know if it'll be longer than that.
Okay, so this is like a genuine question. So you you interviewed Jordan Belfort yesterday.
Yeah.
How is this different from what he did? He only served 22 months.
Well, I think it's the magnitude. He was sentenced to 4, served 22. I think it's the magnitude of how much damage you conducted. How many people's lives did you F up and ruin? And that's why I think the multitude is substantially larger with SBF.
Madoff got 150 years, and I'm pretty sure this is a bigger one.
Really? That's an interesting comparison. Yeah, because that was, that is fascinating. 150 years. So I think then it comes also down to the evidence, because like how clearly can you link? I don't know the Madoff trial that well, but how clearly were they able to show that Madoff acted out of malice rather than stupidity, right? Like, you could make the argument that you made mistakes and you're stupid. You still go to jail. That's why I think 25 years for being an idiot, right? But to get 150 years, I almost wonder
if there is more concrete evidence around Madoff to show that he was just like a straight up scumbag.
Well, here's a very, very important detail. The reason Bernie Madoff got 150 years, he pled guilty. SBF has not pled guilty.
I don't know, but then there would have to be more. I don't know if that would that make a difference. I don't know.
Pleading Madoff at 70 years old pleaded guilty, maximum terms totaling 150 years.
Yeah.
Oh, so he only got 150 is what you're saying.
Well, I mean,
Like SBF could potentially get 250.
I don't
more.
know what. I mean, maybe you have more clarity. Like after 100 years, what does that mean? Like,
Well, I mean,
what's the difference between 150 and 250? Like you're
well,
dying in jail
because
either way.
it's because of good behavior, and you get reductions, percentage-based reductions. That's why they'll do multiple life sentences. People are like, why do you get multiple life sentences? It's because if you get one reduced for good behavior by half, then you're still in jail because of the other counts. So Bernie Madoff, there was let's see, he was sentenced. The amount missing from client accounts was $65 billion.
I'm gonna watch that movie tonight.
We're gonna watch a movie to learn.
The
about
Bernie Madoff documentary on Netflix is really good.
Is it
watched
really?
Once. Yeah, it's like a 3-part series, and it's just like how Bernie Madoff did what he did.
Oh, they have a documentary?
Yep.
I mean, that makes sense that they do. There'll probably be a documentary, honestly, on SBF in the future.
FTX stole 10 billion.
See, yeah, that's interesting. Okay, yeah, and here, yeah. Okay, so that's a sixth. So Bernie was actually... that shows you the magnitude of Bernie.
Yeah.
That Bernie was 6 to 7x FTX.
And that was back when the US dollar meant something.
Oh,
Bernie was interesting because he was like the golden boy of Wall Street because he kept bailing out the banks and things like that because he had so much money he kept bailing people out, and so everybody was shocked when he fell down. Kind of like SBF, like everybody has said multiple times, like SBF is the J Powell of crypto.
that's true.
Very similar to what Bernie did.
That's interesting. Yeah. So the magnitude here definitely. I think a big difference. And keep in mind, Bernie was operating in a regulated industry.
True.
Sam Bankman-Fried was operating in a not regulated industry. So that does lessen. I think the damages for SBF. So smaller amount, unregulated industry. You're still a scumbag. You're still a fraud. I think 25 years minimum. But I don't think he's gonna get like 100 years or something crazy like that.
And
like he'll be free on the streets again in before he dies.
Wow.
Yeah, but he's going to jail.
25. So you're saying 25 years or less?
I didn't say or less.
Let's make a bet.
25
years.
At least 25 to 30, somewhere in that range.
25 to 30.
Yeah, somewhere in there. Yeah, like a mortgage.
He doesn't have any licenses. It's interesting. The SEC, for lack of it,
You don't need licenses to be a fraud.
No.
So I take my fraud test.
50 to 60 years.
We'll see.
Because Bernie Madoff was investigated, I believe, twice by the SEC, and they didn't catch him.
Yeah. He also did it his whole life. Like that was a.
Yeah, he either
length
got
of time.
invested twice and got caught the second time, or got investigated twice and didn't get caught.
No, I don't think he got caught. I think his kids turned him in.
Yeah, his sons did. His sons did turn him in.
Wow. All right, folks.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Check out HouseHack. Thank you so much. I'll read this little disclaimer here. Go to househack.com. This is it. 2023 fundraise is over. Thank God. Fundraising's hard. A lot of emails to respond to. It's a lot of work. I just want to buy deals. That's what we're going to do. We're going to do sick work at HouseHack. Learn about it at househack.com. Remember, folks, even though I'm a licensed financial advisor, licensed real estate broker, and becoming a stockbroker, this video is neither personalized financial nor real estate advice for you. It is not tax, legal, or otherwise personal advice tailored to you. The content we show shall not be deemed reasonably sufficient information for the purposes of evaluating a security, and the content we show is not endorsed by us. So when we put stuff up on screen, we're adding market commentary. We personally operate an actively managed ETF and hold long positions at various securities that we mentioned in the video. We have no relationship to issuers or are a market maker. Only relationship we have is with HouseHack. Go to househack.com. Thanks so much.